GUBERNA is launching the Academic Hub, a space where its knowledge as a research institute meets academia, so as to jointly create projects with scientific originality and rigor to the benefit of the GUBERNA member and academic community. And so we have launched a first project, you have heard about it already, with Professor Xavier Baten, on good board practices in relation to executive remuneration policies. So our second project is about multiple voting rights and their potential influence on the checks and balances in corporate governance. For this study, we're going to bundle GUBERNA's expertise on data and on corporate governance with the knowledge of Tom Vos, with a view of identifying the opportunities and risks of multiple voting rights in Belgian listed companies. And so you have heard it already. For this project, our academic partner is Tom Vos. Tom Vos, assistant professor at the University of Maastricht, as well as visiting professor at the Jean-Pierre Bloemberg Chair, University of Antwerp. Very welcome, Tom, and very happy to do this project with you.
Thank you very much, Sandra, for the invitation.
So are you ready, Tom? Can we start with the first question?
Sure, go ahead.
So tell first to our members, Tom, what is this research project about exactly?
So indeed, I'm very excited to be collaborating with GUBERNA on a research project on multiple voting rights. And what we want to do is not only study multiple voting rights in theory, but also ask directors and investors how they see multiple voting rights, the potential benefits, but also the pitfalls, because they have been a bit controversial. Are multiple voting rights, they offer a few benefits by providing certain investors with the possibility to enhance their control and facilitate their long-term vision. But they can also reduce accountability towards other outside investors. And so we want to see how do board members see this balance between benefits and pitfalls, and also how do investors see it.
So you mentioned several advantages. You also mentioned, I think, some controversial arguments. Can you elaborate on those? And a very important question, why should directors care about this?
Right. So I think the main advantage for multiple voting rights is they give the possibility to give control over the company towards one investor or a certain group of investors who may have a superior long-term vision for the company. So it can facilitate long-term value creation and can also help convince those founders who want to stay in control to take their company public nonetheless, because they will be able to retain control with these multiple voting rights. But that is, of course, also a bit the problem, because if we entrench control with one group of investors, maybe other investors will not like this so much. And that is, of course, where the board of directors comes in. They are also not only there to do the bidding of one investor, they are responsible for thinking of all the shareholders, as well as taking into account the interest of stakeholders. So for them, it's important to understand this balance between the advantages and disadvantages of multiple voting rights and how to deal with it.
So can you explain to me why this is still needed? Because we, as you know, of course, we already have loyalty voting rights, the double voting rights for loyal shareholders in listed companies. So why do we still need multiple voting rights? What would be the main difference and the main advantage of multiple versus loyal?
Right, and I think that's the fair question to ask, because there have been some companies who have adopted loyalty voting rights.
Not a lot.
But not a lot. It's around 10% of our Belgian companies, so around 10, 11 companies, I believe. We've done empirical research on this, me and my co-authors. And so far we see these loyalty voting rights are mainly used by reference shareholders to enhance their control. Very similar to how multiple voting rights more generally are used in other countries, because Belgium currently doesn't allow other forms of multiple voting rights than loyalty voting rights. But we believe, or some academics believe, that multiple voting rights more generally can have some advantages because they provide more flexibility and also a stronger control for the founders, because with loyalty voting rights, you only get double voting rights. And for some, that's just not enough to convince them to take the step and go public with the company, also taking into account that other loyal shareholders may also acquire these double voting rights. So multiple voting rights can offer a bit more flexibility, make our Belgian stock exchange perhaps a bit more attractive for listing a company.
So we believe that there are several advantages in the comparison. We will find out with the study if directors do agree with us or not. The research project is going to be launched as our second project in 2025. We are planning to land in 2026, and within GUBERNA we're very severe on deadlines. Why do you think, Tom, that it's relevant to do this project now?
Well, it's really the moment for multiple voting rights now for researching it. We had last year a directive on multiple voting shares at the European level. So Belgium will have to do something. And the EU says we need to introduce, or you need to allow companies to introduce multiple voting shares if they are listed on a multilateral trading facility, which is kind of a junior stock exchange, such as Euronext Access, Euronext Growth. But what we've seen is in other countries, many member states have then immediately said, well, let's also introduce multiple voting rights for those companies listing on the regulated market, Euronext Brussels or Euronext Paris, Euronext Amsterdam. So if Belgium doesn't want to be an international outlier, we also, in my view, have to take the step and allow multiple voting rights for other companies, also for the regulated market. And I'm a member of a working group of academics founded within the Belgian Center for Company Law, where we have actually adopted some recommendations to the Belgian legislator to implement multiple voting shares in Belgium now. So I think that makes this also the right moment to test the market and see with board members and their investors to what extent they view multiple voting rights as something useful, and also what safeguards for investors and other stakeholders there should be in their view.
Taken into account. Very clear, Tom. As you mentioned, these multiple voting rights are sometimes disliked by investors because they think that they might undermine their protection. There might be a same perception about stakeholders' interests. Will the study also look into these potential disadvantages?
Exactly, and those are the questions we want to ask directors, in particular the independent directors perhaps. How do they see the risks of multiple voting rights? Do they see themselves as still capable of protecting the interests of minority shareholders and stakeholders when they're faced with a controlling shareholder, which will be facilitated now because of the multiple voting rights? So that's precisely the type of questions we want to be asking in our interviews with directors.
Yeah. And to help them look into the relevant governance instrument to create these checks and balances.
Exactly. It's all about the checks and balances.
Great. So may I conclude that this study, Tom, that we are going to do together will be very relevant to board members, not just relevant, but very relevant, because it will offer insights in the potential benefits of a multi-shareholder structure for companies, but also more practical recommendations as to the accompanying corporate governance instruments to guarantee these checks and balances. Can you agree with that?
I fully agree with that. I would say there's many ways that the study can benefit board members. It will help them see what other directors are thinking with regards to multiple voting rights, which can then inform their own assessment of whether it is something that could be useful in their company. And it will also inform them of how investors are looking at this, because of course the main party they will be needing to convince if they decide to introduce multiple voting rights will be those investors. And perhaps also, of course, we still need to convince the Belgian legislator. So maybe the study will also help with that to show that if there is a demand for this among the boards of listed companies, that this can help to convince the legislator that perhaps this is a tool that Belgian companies need to have in their toolbox.
Great conclusion, Tom, and I think a great introduction also of this research project. Thanks a lot. We are really looking forward to do this together with you.
Same here. Thank you very much for the invitation.